Thanks, everyone. My name is Jason Hall. I work for Quest Software. Quest is based out of Southern California, but I'm local to Boston, so it's always nice to attend a conference. It's a short train right away. Quest is generally better known for our products than we are as a company. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a testament to what we offer. But I always enjoy doing presentations like this because we'll get a lot of head nods and I'll kind of talk through Quest, and then at the end of it, we'll get a lot of, oh, I didn't realize that was your product, right? So it's one of the reasons we kind of like doing sessions like these and talking to you folks about your environments. We're fortunate to be sponsoring this conference, and as a part of that, we got 15 minutes to kind of have a chat with you about what we do and what we offer. But before I get into the products themselves, I kind of wanted to lay a backdrop of what we're seeing in the industry and the conversations that we're having with our customers. Now our customers are IT organizations. Our end users are typically IT admins, right? We sell tools that help database administrators, developers, sysadmins, whoever they might be, do their jobs more effectively. So our end users and our direct customers are kind of living in the world that IT organizations are setting out for their companies to get into. And a lot of our conversations over the last several years have focused around these three themes. My goal kind of out of this session is to, one, get some head nods that your organizations are going through these same journeys. Two, provide some context to show you that you're not alone. And then three, talk just real briefly about how we can help. So the first is the acknowledgement that we're all living in a multi-platform / hybrid, whatever you want to call it, data world, right? 15, 20 years ago, most of the conversations we had with IT shops, they would tell us that we've got a singular data platform that we store all of our data in, right? You could have been an Oracle shop, a DB2 shop, whatever you were, you likely had a standard, right, data technology that you made sure that all of your applications and use cases fit into. Right? That doesn't happen anymore, right? Every once in a while, we'll still run into those single platform shops, but it's incredibly rare. There's a lot of reasons behind that. We'll go into some of the reasons, but most organizations we go into these days, they've got lots of different database platforms. They've got some data on-prem, some data in the cloud, and their admin team kind of has to make that work, right? How do we manage these disconnected systems that could be located wherever they are? As a sub-component of that is the second bullet there around open source, right? And I incorrectly stated a few years back when I would give this presentation that open source technologies are new and disruptive in the database world, right? And they're not. Open source is not new. Open source databases are not new. They've been around for dozens of years. What is relatively new, though, is enterprise IT shops trusting business-critical applications on open source technologies. Right? You wouldn't have gone into the Fortune 100s of the world 10 years ago and seen mission-critical applications running on Postgres or MySQL, where now you are. So that's introduced some challenges about, yes, the software license is free when you use an open source technology, but that doesn't mean that the system's any less critical, and how do we manage that? All right. And then the third bullet there is DevOps, data ops, whatever you want to call it. The impact to our customers are relatively the same. DevOps has, I think, unfortunately become very buzzwordy, and for good reason, right? There's a lot of benefit that it provides organizations around getting functionality and value into customers' hands as quickly as possible. But the best definition that I've come across with DevOps is, there's a gentleman out of Microsoft named Donovan Brown. He's their Microsoft evangelist, or at least he was. I don't know if he still is. Evangelist for DevOps, and he defines DevOps as, he has this Venn diagram, and he says people, processes, and products, right? And the middle is what's required to be successful at DevOps. And so the people, most organizations, some are going to a organizational structure to embody DevOps, right? They're hiring and orchestrating their teams in a way to adopt those principles. But a lot of our customers today are trying to enable their existing staff in the seats that they sit in to be successful with DevOps. And so we like to talk about kind of the technologies and the products and the processes that we can enable to help those existing people be successful. Right? So these are kind of the industry trends that we're seeing. Most of the conversations we're having with customers, and this was validated during a lot of our conversations that I had yesterday, for those of you that came by the Quest booth, a lot of them kind of centered around these three objectives. Now, I often throw these three things up, and again, I'm hoping to get head nods and confirmation that these are things that your organizations are striving towards, or at least implementing today. And very often I get customers say, well, what about security and compliance, right? And so, of course, that's a critical thing. I mean, none of this can happen at the expense of security and compliance, right? Most of us are going to be in verticals, whether you're retail or financial or federal government or insurance or healthcare, whatever it is, right? We all have critical compliance objectives that have to be met. So that's a significant challenge. It's not a new challenge, but it's a, I guess, increasingly challenging challenge. That's probably not the best way to say it, but that we cannot adopt any of these at the expense of. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about that too. Just to shed some perspective, we really like working with DBTA. I'm not just saying that because you allowed me to speak. But we get a lot of really good market data through some surveys that we do. And just to kind of validate what we're seeing, I thought I'd share some statistics. There's a paper that a survey that we participated in with DBTA. Anyone who wants to see the full data, I can send it to you. But this is a really interesting graphic. We interviewed hundreds of organizations and just asked them a very simple question: how many database platforms that you manage? This number 20 years ago would have been way skewed in the opposite direction, but you can see as of, I think this was at the end of last year we did this. If you combine the 4 to 5 and the more than 5, we're seeing 40% of our customers now managing at least 4 different database platforms. And I bet if we redid the survey today, that would even skew even further. So doesn't matter how big the organization, even relatively small organizations are having to manage lots of different database platforms. Now, there's lots of reasons behind that. I could go into, spend 5 minutes on each one of these. But the root of it is that IT organizations are no longer forcing databases into singular platforms because that's their standard. It's that they're making more intelligent and rational and data-driven decisions about where their data should be stored, right? You can see the first several of those, right? Supporting applications that either can't efficiently store their data in a specific type of platform, enabling workloads that maybe don't fit into the relational model, right? So we store them in non-relational databases. What's interesting here is I would have thought much higher in this list would have been the 5th one about managing license cost, right? Because, a lot of these legacy database platforms, to put it bluntly, are expensive, right? And one of the reasons we hear organizations bringing in open source technologies or alternate technologies is they're trying to make the most cost-effective decision that drives the capabilities they need, right? And if they don't need to spend $1 million on a software license to drive a database server, they're not going to. So that is certainly in play here. I mean, it's not an insignificant number, but what I thought was really interesting out of this survey was that it wasn't even one of the top 4, right? It was 5th on the list in terms of wrangling in license costs. So this just goes to show you, organizations are making technical decisions about data platforms to leverage based on application needs, developer needs, workloads that just don't fit into their existing models. Which is kind of why and how this challenge has existed. Cloud adoption, right? Cloud, another not new technology. It's been around for quite a while now. But again, just increasing volume of data, number of instances, however you want to call it, data moving into the cloud for lots of reasons. Cloud data volumes increasing tremendously. The number, you probably are all living that. You don't need the numbers to prove it to you, but it's a reality in today's day and age. Many organizations we talk to across all verticals, right? There's this, talk to people who say, we're in healthcare, we can't store anything in the cloud. Well, it's not really true. There's lots of healthcare organizations doing a lot in the cloud. So across all verticals, we're really seeing organizations move towards this, either cloud first or at least cloud as an option strategy. For managing data. And again, rationale is there's all kinds of reasons. Cloud provides flexibility. It can provide cost control. In some cases, it doesn't provide cost control, and that can be a challenge when you get your first bill. But there's lots of reasons. There's some things you can just do in the cloud that you can't do in your own data centers. There is some potential cost control. There's better scale, on-demand scaling, linear scaling based on consumption. So there's all kinds of reasons, but the reality is that it's there. And then finally, open source. No matter what numbers you look at, this is an IDC survey, but there's lots of ways you can look at this number. The overall database market is growing as fast as it ever has, and in many ways faster. But if you look at the split between on-prem servers, or sorry, this is paid servers versus open source licenses, the growth is actually trending towards open source. We work with a very large healthcare organization, Express Scripts. We just did a case study with them. They're a pharmaceutical insurance provider. Many of you probably have their card in your wallet. And they have a very significant objective that they're actually executing quite well on, to where any net new database development is going to go on an open source platform unless they can prove why it can't. So, they have a couple different options in terms of Mongo, Postgres, MySQL, but they have an open source first mentality for any net new development, right? Which is pretty interesting. They're a very large healthcare organization with very strict security and compliance guidelines, and even they, right, are really diving, all the way into this open source shift. Right? So, with that as the backdrop, right, these are a lot of the conversations we're having with customers. How does this affect our end users, right? Organizations set up these strategies for very good reasons, but it's up to the admins, right, the people in the trenches, right, to actually make all of this work. And that's been a huge challenge for our customers, right? And there's lots of reasons behind that. The cross-platform challenge, it was really, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was very comfortable back 15 years ago when you were a DBA, because you were probably an Oracle DBA. That's where most of your data lived. You had a lot of experience. You had a lot of comfort with the Oracle infrastructure. And your job, again, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was comfortable. Right? Now that same DBA is being tasked with managing 3, 4, 5 different data platforms, right? Each with different sets of capabilities, each with different ways to manage the system, each with different options around HADR, each with their own security challenges. And I've heard DBAs refer to all the time. It's like, I'm a database administrator, and my organization has given me these different systems to manage, assuming that just because they're a database, they have to be managed in a similar way. And that's just simply not the case. Right? So our end users in this cross-platform hybrid role, they feel like, I've got this graphic of a DBA juggling bowling pins, right? And it kind of resonates well, because you've got all these different things up in the air, all these different platforms you have to manage, and no consistency between how we can do that. The DevOps, data ops, whatever you want to call it, objective, the one tenet that I always like to bring up with DBAs, because there's a lot of DevOps, data ops that is kind of outside of the scope of the database administrator, but the one that kind of resonates the most with DBAs is this whole fail fast, fix fast principle, right? And this isn't just a DevOps philosophy, but it certainly has perspectives there. The whole idea is, if something's going to fail, let it. That's okay. Failure's okay, as long as if something fails, you can fix it as fast as possible. Right? If I push out a change into production and it fails, that's okay. Just I need to be able to back that out quickly with as little impact to our end users as possible. Now, that principle doesn't really resonate with DBAs, right? DBAs are notoriously risk averse. They're notoriously careful, right? And they do everything in their power to keep things from failing. So this whole idea that failure is okay is tricky. But the whole idea of DBAs now having to manage changes to their system all the time, outside of the comfortable change control window. I talk a lot about sharing of information. DBAs have always been very protective of their database servers, and there's this constant fight between DBA and developer about who's wrong and who's causing a problem. But in order for DevOps to be successful, you really have to have a shared open line of communication between all the different stakeholders in a database environment. And so we as DBAs can't be as siloed and as protective of our data and our infrastructure, especially when it comes to system performance and health. Right? So with that as a backdrop, these changes are happening. They're affecting our admins and our end users. And at the end of the day, if our admins are ineffective, it doesn't allow us to really drive those changes and those trends as far forward as we need to. And no database administrator wants to be the barrier that's not enabling their organization to expand into non-relational use cases or move data into the cloud or be successful at DevOps. So our portfolio is made up of 3 different product families. And again, a lot of you probably listened to me chatter for 15 minutes and said, I've never heard of Quest, but you might be resonating or recognizing some of these products. That's not uncommon. Toad is our database development and management platform. We've got Toads for lots of different database platforms, and Toad is really just designed at making DBAs more effective and efficient at managing their systems. Shareplex is our data replication solution. There's lots of solutions or lots of uses of replication, but the real guts of Shareplex is that it can take data from one system and in a very stable and fast and scalable way replicate it out to another system. And then Foglight is our database monitoring and diagnostic solution, right, that can help admins discover problems, fix problems, and do things like trending and capacity planning in a single interface. And just to wrap these into themes, and then I'll let you guys go on your way. When we talk about heterogeneous and hybrid infrastructures, both Toad and Foglight are really well suited because they take that uncomfortableness of having to manage different systems and make workflows and tasks very consistent across each of the platforms that you manage. Right? If you can get your head around Foglight, and now you've been tasked with managing SQL Server, Oracle, MongoDB, Postgres, and Cassandra, right? Now the way that you manage that infrastructure can be much more consistent and comfortable for an end user or an admin. Right? This is just a screenshot from Foglight kind of showing your scope, but those cross-platform, heterogeneous hybrid DBAs, regardless of what you want to call them, can have this kind of holy grail of a single pane of glass look into their infrastructure. And Toad's similar, right? If you're administering or developing against a database server, it's a lot easier to do that in a consistent IDE rather than having to bounce between different products. And then we talk about Shareplex as a replication solution. One of our core Shareplex use cases is migrating of systems. That could be migrating between, let's say, different versions of Oracle, or that could be migrating from on-prem into the cloud with as little downtime as possible. All right, so data replication is not a new technique by any means, but it's being used in more strategic ways, for example, in helping a customer migrate between systems. I'm going to skip open source because this kind of fits into the whole hybrid category. But again, Toad and Foglight offer monitoring and management of open source databases alongside commercial alternatives. And then the last bullet here, DevOps. There's a couple features of the portfolio that kind of fit into a DevOps orchestration. Toad has some capabilities around automation and kind of helping customers with, I call them the continui, right? Continuous deployment, continuous development, continuous delivery, whatever you want to call it. There's automation packages in Toad where you can do like code promotion, code reviews, code optimization, code unit testing, and automate all of that into a DevOps pipeline. Foglight allows for some really unique capabilities around change detection, right? Isolating a problem in a production application back to a change event that caused it. Fits really nicely into that fail fast, fix fast model of if something fails, that's okay as long as you can diagnose it and roll it back as quickly as possible. It also has some really unique capabilities around sharing performance data with different end users that might need it. And then finally, Shareplex. There's use cases in Shareplex around replication for delivering real-time production data down to development environments so that those that have to build on the system can do so with real production data. Right? So that's the portfolio. I know that was a really quick sprint through it. We do have a booth right on the opposite side of those cameras if you want to talk further. There's myself and a few other folks on my team that are here to talk further. Hopefully this was at least insightful, and we'd love to talk more. So thank you.